Hi everyone, Dr. Beth Zogg with Zogg Family Chiropractic. Today I want to tell you a story about this young man. This young man was happily married, a newlywed as a matter of fact, who had just started a job in the Quad Cities in Moline, Illinois at John Deere Harvester. And for those of us in the Midwest, everybody knows who John Deere is for making tractors and construction equipment. And so this newlywed couple, they had their whole lives ahead of them. They had just moved. This young man had just started a new job, and everything was looking up for them. Well, one day at work, this guy was helping unload some wood off of a truck, and the wood slipped, and it just kind of slid down and hit him in the back. And it wasn't some terrible injury. He didn't have to go to the hospital or the doctor or anything like that. He didn't think too much about it, actually. But a short time later, this young man developed acute onset diabetes. Now, he had never had diabetes in his life prior to this. And all of a sudden, his pancreas just shut down. And so he had gone to all of the best doctors in the area because prior to this, he had worked in a pharmacy and he had a lot of connections with the best doctors in the area. And they all tried the traditional treatments, which failed. And so eventually it got to the point that the doctor said to this guy, hey, you need to get your affairs in order because you probably only have days to weeks left to live. So he was filling up with fluid, his urine was black, his, blood sugar was off the charts. He was in so much pain that he wasn't even getting undressed and taking a bath anymore. He was just really waiting to die. And so his young bride that you can see pictured here didn't know what to do. And so she took him home to his parents' house to die. Well, when they got there, this young guy's father said, hey, why don't you go see the old family chiropractor? And being a young 26-year-old said, seeing his father is very unsophisticated, of course, he said, why should I go see some old quack when the best doctors have not been able to help me? And his father said, well, what have you got to lose? None of the others have been able to help you, So to make his dad happy more than anything else, he agreed to go see the old family chiropractor. Now, the family didn't have a lot of money, and the chiropractor lived pretty far away, so he had to take a train to see this guy. And so the family just had enough money to pull together for one train ticket, and they sent him off, thinking they'd probably never see him again. Well, he got off the train, and the old-time chiropractor recognized him. He took him to his office. He did his examination, took some x-rays, and he said, I think I see the cause of your problem. And this caused this young man to be very agitated. And he said, there's nothing wrong with my back. I have diabetes. And the doc said, all right, just let me do my work. And so he laid him out on this table, and it was a pretty primitive adjusting table. It was kind of a two-part table where your chest is supported and your hips are supported, but then your belly just kind of hangs down, nicely in between. Well, never having been adjusted before, this young man didn't know what to expect. But before he knew it, this chiropractor came down with so much force, he felt like his belly button surely had hit the floor. He said when he was interviewed later that it kind of scared him because he had this sudden feeling of warmth come all over his body. And wouldn't you know, he slept for the first time in weeks that night. And so he stayed at this chiropractor's home, and he was adjusted every day, and he was sent home 16 days later, completely free of diabetes. Now, the reason that this story is so important to me is that, of course, this was my grandpa. And if my grandpa had died at age 26, my mom would have never been born, and I wouldn't be a chiropractor today either. And so that's how my family came into chiropractic. I know nowadays people kind of think, oh, chiropractic's just for treating neck and back pain, but that's really not what chiropractic is about. And you can see in this instance where the subluxation that was caused by that injury affected the nerve flow to the pancreas. So my grandpa's pancreas was shut down, and until he got that subluxation adjusted, he wasn't going to get any better. About 10 years after my grandpa received this first course of chiropractic care, he went to Palmer School of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa, to become a chiropractor himself. Now, my grandfather had a background in engineering, and he had spent a lot of time as a younger, teenager working in a machine shop. So he knew a lot about, engineering and building and inventing things. And so when he got to the Palmer School, he recognized that a lot of the equipment had not been updated in a very long time. The technique at that time was the HIO, the hole-in-one era of chiropractic, where the chiropractors were focused solely on the top two bones in the neck. So the adjustment was given with the patient laying on their side, and then the adjustment was given, on the side of the top bone of the neck, on the side of the atlas, or on the axis, the second bone. And the headpiece was just a little bit elevated, but it did not move at all. It's called the stationary headpiece. And so when my grandfather, which you can tell from, these pictures, he wasn't a very big person, not a big burly guy by any means. When he gave his first adjustment in the clinic, he felt a lot of force coming back into his body. And he thought, this is a lot of stress on the doctor, and it probably isn't the most comfortable for the patient either. And so he got to work and came up with this invention of the very first drop headpiece. And the beautiful thing about the headpiece is that it allows the chiropractor to use much less force, but because of the speed of the drop, the adjustment is more gentle and more effective. And so you can imagine, as the chiropractor puts a thrust into the patient's neck, into the vertebra, that force goes through the vertebra and then through that drop pad after it's cocked up. And then as both the vertebra and the drop pad fall through space, when they hit bottom, there's a concussion of forces, at which point the body puts the bones back in the right position, because you have an intelligence within you that knows exactly where every bone in your body should be at every single second. So my grandfather went on then to develop a full spine drop table. And then he created a whole analysis and adjusting technique that was suited specifically for the drop table. So in our office, we do use the drop table. We love it because it is gentle and it doesn't require any big forceful moves, any real super twisty moves. And so it's very safe, and it's, to me, it's one of my favorite ways to get adjusted, as well as my favorite technique in taking care of my patients and practice members. This is just such a sweet picture. This was in the 1990s while I was a student at Chiropractic College down in Marietta, Georgia, Life University. And my grandpa, he actually did pass away a couple weeks before I graduated school, but he was so tickled that I was following in his footsteps to become a chiropractor. And so this is at one of the conferences that he came down for, and what a really precious memory. I hope you can see how important chiropractic has been to my family for, decades, and how much passion that we have for chiropractic, and for also you, the patients, to make sure that you can live life healthily. So if you do not have a chiropractor and you live near Coralville, Iowa, I would love to be your chiropractor. Our contact information is on the screen. My grandpa, Dr. Thompson, said all the time that the subluxation is the greatest enemy of mankind. So let's get you in and get your spine checked for subluxations today.